just don't be surprised. Don't act like it wasn't told to you, essentially. This has been in the works for a while, and the thing that I have to say about Just Saturday before everyone gets their pitchforks out and trying to chase my head around, Just Saturday. Welcome to the Third and Wrong YouTube channel today. This is your boy Dylan, rocking it solo once again. But we're going to be talking about the head coaching vacancies for a lot of these teams today. Two positions got filled, which leaves two more left. We're going to be talking about that here after this intro. But before we get there, please help us out. We're a small YouTube channel trying to make some good content for the NFL. We know a lot of you people like that kind of stuff. That's why you're on this video. And if you appreciate what we do, please drop a like, comment, and subscribe. Helps us out a bunch. Keeps us going forward. So do that real quick, and then we'll get into this video.
I might act rude. I lost gang members, I can't act cool. I got gang scriptures in my tattoos. I was running from the police in my trap shoes. Posted trying to flip 100, I come back fool. Come from nothing, but I blossom to a tycoon. Betrayal scars, case I think about them stab wounds. We might not catch him today, but he gon' die soon.
Alright, welcome back. Like I said, we are going to be talking about the head coaching vacancies that got filled, namely by the Broncos and by the Texans. If you haven't heard, there is some breaking news on that front. So we'll cover that. Also, we're going to be talking about the two teams that are left and what candidates are likely to go to those teams. Those teams are going to be the Colts, which, if you can't see right there, I'm a big Colts fan. I'm not going to hide my bias. I am subjective, and I'm not going to hide from that. I know I am. And then we're going to be talking about the Cardinals as well. They're looking for their head coach of the future to pair with Kyler Murray. So we'll get to that here in a second as well. And then I'm going to, kind of lay out what we're going to be doing for this offseason. So stick to the end here. We got some exciting things coming up on the horizon. It's going to be a good offseason, so stick with us throughout, and we'll give you some great content. We are going to be able to bring up some receipts on things that we were wrong about and things that we were right about, so stay tuned for that. But like I said, let's get into the head coaches. So the big news today was the Houston Texans grabbing DeMeco Ryans. It was pretty much all but reported last week when I believe Ian Rappaport said that basically the Texans were going to hold out for DeMeco Ryans. Obviously, with the way that the rules work with the NFL, you can't announce that until his season is over with the Niners. And unfortunately for the Niners and DeMeco Ryans, their season ended last Sunday. And so talks quickly went from interviews to player personnel, coach personnel, all that kind of stuff. And today they locked him down. It was something that, if you have seen my videos in the past, the last video I did about the head coaching vacancy, I did specifically about the Colts. I mentioned DeMeco Ryans as a top 3 candidate for myself, but I also stipulated in there that I believe he goes to the Texans. And that was before Ian Rappaport, so, big brain right here. But really, the main reason why I believe he went there, and I don't think it's really a secret, he played for the Texans early in his career, and I believe his significant other, if not wife, I'm not sure on that front, is from Houston. So just made a lot of sense. He's got a lot of connections there, and I'm sure he's excited to go and make his team better from when he played there. And he's definitely learned a lot, especially in San Francisco. So fantastic hire for the Texans. Like I said, as a Colts fan, it's not my favorite. I would prefer to have him, but just makes a lot of sense on a lot of accounts there. And then the other one was the big news for the Broncos. There was some reporting that maybe the Broncos were going to go and try and pull Jim Harbaugh from the Michigan school, University of Michigan, obviously. But there were some other rumblings about DeMeco Ryans and this and that. But the Broncos were in talks with the Saints. They were able to interview Sean Payton, one of the only head coaches that the Colts did not get an interview with for whatever reason. We can get into that later. But the Broncos did make a great trade, which is not like typically how you get your head coach. The Broncos traded a first-round pick this year, so the 2023 pick, and I'll double-check here real quick as I'm talking, but they also traded away their second-round pick for the next draft, so the 2024 NFL draft, and they got Sean Payton under contract, and I believe they'll refinalize another deal and all that kind of stuff. And they got a third-round pick back for next year's draft, if I'm not mistaken. So, some big news. I'm not finding this real quick. 1 second here. NFL draft trades. Okay, so let's see if this is all updated correctly. So the New Orleans Saints will get the 29th overall pick from San Francisco via Miami and Denver. And so this is San Francisco pick that they traded to Miami, that was then traded to Denver, and Denver is now trading it to New Orleans so that they can get a first-round pick, which they traded away last year for Chris Olave and the Eagles, who now have the 10th overall pick, even though they're in the Super Bowl and likely to win it, which is crazy. So, so that's the kind of big breakdown there. We talked about it, Gage, Mike, and I. And Gage, I'm not going to put him on blast here, but he just had that reaction of, why are you trading a first-round pick for a coach? But you're not trading it for a coach. You're trading it for Sean Payton. And I think that honestly makes the biggest difference there. Sean Payton, if you don't know, had extreme success with Drew Brees, notoriously a shorter quarterback, so that gives a lot of people hope for Russell Wilson improving under Sean Payton. And we'll see if that happens. Not necessarily sure that happens, but, we'll see what he can do with Russell Wilson. But after the year that you had with Nathaniel Hackett, couldn't hack it, obviously. I think this is the right step for the Broncos. Get the guys back in on the bus, essentially. Get all the people that may be more skeptical about the Broncos at this point back on the train. And, we'll see Bronco country ride. So, no, I'm just playing on that, but no, for real, this is a really good trade. Sean Payton does know the NFL pretty damn well. He's had very good success for more than just one season. They beat the Colts in the Super Bowl a long time ago. But they've also been in the playoffs consistently. They've had plenty of opportunities in the playoffs. They've won a ton of games since then. They've had great defenses. They've had great offenses. And it seems like the Saints kind of fell apart as soon as Sean Payton left. So we'll see. Obviously, this isn't a guarantee that the Broncos are going to be night and day a different team or anything along those lines. But it gives your team, once again, that kind of resurgence of, okay, we're playing for something for real this year. And then also gives you the hope that Russell Wilson isn't going to be wasting his twilight of his career, essentially. He's going to be given every opportunity, essentially, to be successful. Which is good because obviously you're invested for 7 years with Russell Wilson. So interesting, coach hire there. I think both teams honestly got probably the best that they could this year for who's all interviewing for head coaching jobs. Since we haven't mentioned it since Frank Reich got hired, that's another one. I didn't mention this in my lead up or anything like that. But Frank Reich is another coach that I got a lot of respect for. I think he is a very good coach. And if you've seen my videos, you might know my opinion about him already. But to me, Frank Reich is a great motivator. He's a great play caller, obviously. He can build an offense and scheme up things, and he's very creative. I got to give that to him. The only thing that I think soured me on Frank Reich is starting slow every single season and just his comfortability with his second half of the season being strong. And that's a good trait, obviously. Having, finishing strong is better than finishing strong and starting strong and finishing weak. But the best teams, like you see with the Eagles, like you see with the Niners, even though they started off the first 5 games kind of slow, they were good from week 6 all the way to the rest of the season. That wasn't happening with the Colts this year. And when Frank got hired and he had one of his first interviews today, he basically said, yeah, my resume, I've shown that I can bring the team back in the second half of the season. But that neglects the first half of the season. Why, even though you've had successful NFL vets come in, and yeah, it's hard to learn it in 1 year or whatever, but if you're, touted as this quarterback whisperer, you're bringing in people that you're familiar with, like, you shouldn't have these frustrating first starts of the season every single year. And, having to change to a new quarterback every single year, it's something that, yeah, it's tough to do, but if you're what you say you are, you should have been able to do it, in my opinion. But anyways, we'll move on to that. That's a little bit more on the sour note of things. And then we're going to be talking about the Colts and the Cardinals, and I'll start with the Cardinals. Another receipt here. If Cage and Mike were here, they would be able to testify. But I called Cliff Kingsbury getting fired. I think I had him as my number 1 hot seat head coach last year, other than Matt Rule. I think everyone knew Matt Rule was on the hottest of the hot seats going into the season. And then, Cliff Kingsbury quickly became that guy for me. Hasn't won in college, hasn't won in the NFL, unless he has Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins on the field at the same time, which is good, obviously, but you got to be able to win other games, especially since they were hurt and injured. So the Cardinals, I believe, let me look up their head coaching candidates just before I start talking about it, because I could definitely be wrong. All right, so these are going to be very similar head coaching candidates, a lot of the same interviews as the Colts have done. First one I have up here was DeMeco Ryans, which everyone interviewed. Obviously, like I said, went to the Texans. But next up, we got Mike Kafka. Sean Payton got hired already. Brian Callahan, Lou Anarumo, which is the only interview that he has had, which would be interesting. But he's the only interview the Cardinals are the only interview that Lou Anarumo has had so far. Dan Quinn, Frank Reich got hired. Brian Flores was interviewed. Aaron Glenn, Lions defensive coordinator. Jairo Evero, Broncos defensive coordinator. Vance Joseph, defensive coordinator. So out of these candidates, there is 2 offensive coordinators left, which means more than likely the odds are that the Cardinals are going to get a defensive head coach for their squad, which is very interesting because Kyler Murray, being a young quarterback, a lot of people would look to get a offensive-minded head coach. I've talked about Mike Kafka and Brian Callahan before. If you haven't seen it, basically, they're both really good coordinators. Both have really good track records with improving quarterbacks. And they both are, that young head coach, hot topic kind of head coach hire. What is interesting is I think Lou Anarumo, even though this is his only interview, I think Lou Anarumo might be the best option for them. I think his leadership and the ability to work with what he has in Cincy for their defense shows, I think, the kind of qualities that you want in a head coach. For some reason, he's not interviewing with the Colts, but this is a very good landing spot for Anarumo. He's got a lot of work to do on the defense, but you have a young quarterback, and you have a lot of connections to young coordinators through the Bengal system. You might be able to pull some people there to, give them opportunities on the offense with Kyler Murray. I still think he has a lot left in the tank. Obviously, he's injured and he's going to be making a midseason debut, but this is a good pairing. I think Anarumo shows a lot of good qualities to be a head coach. So that's who I think might be the best choice there. Obviously, I want Mike Kafka or Brian Callahan. But other head coaches that might be good, Dan Quinn has had experience there, and Brian Flores has experience. I think those would also be very good head coaches. It would be interesting to see Brian Flores get the job. He did a really good job with the Dolphins, but obviously that kind of fell apart in the ways that it did. But I do think that if they were able to get one of Flores or Dan Quinn, they would get a lot of experience and be able to move quickly back into the playoffs. These other coordinators that are first-time head coaches, you're going to have to expect them to take, I would say, 2 to 3 years, more of a full rebuild kind of situation, and just build completely around Kyler Murray and some of the pieces that you have there on offense and defense, and just rework the whole team. So very interesting there for the Cardinals. I won't talk too much about the Colts because I already dropped a whole video. Really, the only big change from that video is that DeMeco Ryans got hired. But with the Colts, one thing I always have to say is we don't need a coordinator. We need a head coach. And that's something that a lot of people just do not get through their thick skulls. And I'll say that time and time again. We do not need a coordinator. We had a coordinator. We had a fantastic coordinator. The coordinator lost a lot of games. It's not because he's a bad coordinator. It's just there's a lot of facets to the game. And if you're focusing on a coordinator, yeah, that's good for that side of the ball. But what are we doing with the other side of the ball? Some of the interesting names I didn't really mention, I will mention here, because the Colts have taken a long time to interview their head coaches. And that's something that is a big change for the Colts from the previous time that they interviewed for their head coaches. Let's see if I can get this all right here. Okay, so there's a laundry list of coaches that the Colts have interviewed. Really, they haven't knocked whole lot of people out of the second round conversation yet. I think they're still waiting on Eric Bieniemy from the Chiefs, and they haven't requested a second interview with Aaron Glenn yet. So I think those two are the ones that haven't gotten their second shot yet. But I'm going to list these off just real quick, and then we'll get into some of the people that I left off my last video. So we got Mike Kafka, Mike Kafka, Giants offensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, the Giants defensive coordinator, Bubba Ventrone, the Colts' own special teams coordinator, Aaron Glenn, Lions defensive coordinator, Raheem Morris, Rams defensive coordinator, Shane Steichen, Eagles offensive coordinator, Ejiro Evero, Broncos defensive coordinator, Eric Bieniemy, Chiefs offensive coordinator, DeMeco Ryans, 49ers defensive coordinator, already hired out, Dan Quinn, Cowboys defensive coordinator, Jeff Saturday, Colts interim head coach, Brian Callahan, Bengals offensive coordinator, Rich Bisaccia, Packers special teams coordinator, Ben Johnson, Lions offensive coordinator, and he pulled his name out of the candidacy, essentially. So, wide berth of head coaches from each side of the ball and special teams. You have two people. Plus, you have Jeff Saturday there, who was the interim head coach. They still really like him. And the one thing that I'll say for Colts fans and any other fans out there, I would not be surprised if Jeff Saturday becomes the head coach. I wouldn't prefer it necessarily. And I believe there are other candidates that I think the Colts actually will go with. Just don't be surprised. Don't act like it wasn't told to you, essentially. This has been in the works for a while. And the thing that I have to say about Jeff Saturday before everyone gets, their pitchforks out and trying to chase my head around, Jeff Saturday did not get his team last year. He basically took over a team that was already failing. Obviously, no head coach experience before, no coaching experience before in the NFL, but a Hall of Fame career that he was able to rely on. Brought a lot of accountability from the reports, and obviously he struggled. He didn't have a perfect last 8 or 9 games. He had some mishaps with time management. He had some mishaps on what he said after games with the reporters. I'm sure he's had mishaps, all sorts of different places. But the thing with I can't talk clearly. The thing with Jeff Saturday is I think his passion for the team obviously is very strong. And I believe he has a good attitude to be the head coach, which again is more important than his coordinating skills with offense and defensive play calling. That's not nearly as important as being a leader. And Jeff Saturday has some endorsements from players already in the locker room. We'll see. I mean, if Jeff Saturday gets hired, just don't be surprised when it works out. I'm not saying it is, and I'm not saying that it won't be. But Jeff Saturday, first of all, it's damn hard to be a Hall of Fame center, essentially. I don't know if he's actually been in the Hall of Fame yet, but he should be if he isn't. But Jeff Saturday, damn hard job to do what he did for Peyton Manning and the Colts for his career here. Really tough thing that he was able to accomplish there. Obviously, these coaches have gone through tough careers as well. No one gets here easily, but you can't say that Jeff Saturday got here easily as well. So I'm not saying he's going to work out, right? I'm not saying he's going to be our best option. Just don't be surprised if it does work out, if he is hired. And you see a whole different, Colts team. However, I do think that the Colts are kind of wheeling it down. What I think ends up happening is we get second interviews for Shane Steichen and I just missed it, Eric Bieniemy. I think what it really comes down to is I think Brian Callahan, Raheem Morris, and Shane Steichen are very good candidates for this job. I think those are going to be the top 3 or 4, however many I said. And I think Ejiro Evero comes on the staff anyways. I think they try to pull him from the Broncos, especially with their whole new shakeup at coaching, head coaching, and all that kind of stuff. I think that might be a grab there. We'll see, but I'm expecting one of Bieniemy, Steichen, and Callahan and Morris. So those 4, I think, are going to be the Colts picks. So if I'm predicting. So that kind of wraps it up there. And then what I'm going to talk about next here is just following our channel for the next couple weeks, months, and all that leading up to the NFL draft and the start of the season. We're going to start putting out content a lot more frequently. We're going to look for guests to join us as well. We're going to be doing mock drafts. We're going to be doing, I guess, watch-alongs or something like that, just watching tape. We're going to put out a new video here, hopefully within the next couple weeks, talking about the do's and don'ts of free agency and the offseason. Just a lot of the things that people say that just do not make sense. But if you watched this far and you're interested in those videos as well, definitely subscribe. Gets you, first access to those kinds of videos. You'll be the first ones notified, especially if you turn on the little bell. And like and drop a comment on this video so that way it keeps churning out more videos for us. Other than that, appreciate the watch if you watched this far, and have a good night.